This One's Wife, Bellendgame, Bombshells. Hello, I'm hgtudor. With the imminent release of Bellendgame by the improbably named plastic-faced lieutenant Omid Scobie, we're going to be treated, in inverted commas, to a raft of revelations pumped out by the Sussex propaganda machine. These revelations are going to be spattered around the press in the run-up to the book's release in order to generate interest in it. They're going to manure the parish with these supposed revelations. And it's now the Mirror's turn. As Jennifer Newton reports, 6 royal bombshells from new book. Harry's sad plea, this one's wife's snub, and dying Queen's wish ignored. His first book about Prince Harry and this one's wife's dramatic departure from the royal family sent shockwaves through the firm, as he wrote out this one's wife's diary. And now, biographer improbably named plastic-faced Lieutenant Omid Scobie is poised to release a brand new book about the monarchy. This time, it focuses on the institution and its fight for survival, and it appears to contain yet more bombshell claims about the Sussexes. Well, it would do, wouldn't it? Because basically, it is the mouthpiece organ for them. It includes explosive allegations about what happened on September the 8th, 2022, when the late Queen died at Markle. The book is due for release at the end of the month, but excerpts have already been published, shedding more light on the relationship between Harry and this one's wife, and the likes of King Charles and Prince William. One of the most explosive claims in the new excerpt is that Harry was kept in the dark about his late grandmother, the Queen's health decline, before her death. The book alleges the Duke of Sussex was not told about worsening health in the hours before her death. The royal author adds Harry and his wife, this one's wife, had no idea the royal family were preparing for the Queen's final hours. I've already dealt with this in This One's Wife, Bellendgame, Harry in the Dark, and therefore we'll move on to the other bombshells to see what that tells us. Another bombshell, and described as such, is that Harry was forced to beg. Eventually, Harry was informed of his grandmother's ailing condition and managed to board a flight to Scotland. The late Queen's death was announced to the world just after 6:30 p.m, not long before Harry's plane landed in Aberdeen. And according to the excerpt, Harry's team had to beg Buckingham Palace not to announce the sad news earlier. It reads, his team literally had to beg for them to wait for his plane to land, and they reluctantly agreed to hold the statement back for a little bit. Again, it's regurgitating what has already been known through another outlet, but it's portraying all of this as bombshells. Monumentally interesting and explosive information, which actually was already out there, courtesy of the propaganda Twitter machinations of Scobie in the past. Another bombshell is the suggestion of King Charles's betrayal. Another bombshell claim is that Harry was left crushed. He did not find out about the late Queen's death until after it had been announced to the world, and that Charles's apparent decision to keep him in the dark is not what his grandmother would have wanted. Well, perhaps it was not what the late Queen Elizabeth would have wanted, but circumstances alter, and you can't always know what's going to happen on the day. It may well have been the case that the Queen, lying in bed on her way out, said, Don't tell that little ginger twat. He's made mine and Philip's life an absolute misery. So you can find out afterwards. That'll teach him, little fanta-pubed wanker. Quite possible that the Queen did have such sentiments towards her grandson after the way that he behaved and the way that he and this one's wife had made life so difficult for Philip and her in the last years of their life. Another apparent bombshell is described as Harry's real reason for quitting. Elsewhere, the book claims Harry was viewed as a threat to the crown and exposed the real reason the Duke of Sussex left the royal family. Harry and this one's wife sensationally quit the firm and the UK in early 2020. As we all know, this was as a consequence of the narcissism of this one's wife, as she found she was unable to control directly the institution and therefore had to assert control by running away. And in an excerpt from the book, Mr. Scobie says Harry wanted the ability to think freely. Well, that's rather ironic, given the fact that his mind is essentially controlled by his handler, this one's wife, who tells him where to go, tells him what to do, tells him what to think. These are probably sad realizations that will be had far too late in the journey. In the eyes of some within the institution, Harry is a threat to the crown. His freedom to exert his own thinking outside of the confines of the institution has made him the enemy, he writes. I would suggest in probably named plastic-faced lieutenant that he's viewed as the enemy as a consequence of the behaviour of him and this one's wife, failing to show respect to senior members of the royal family, doling out information which is false, telling lies and revising history, making spurious claims of racism against members of the royal family, making claims about a lack of support in relation to suicidal ideation and mental health issues, which clearly was not the case. I think it's those issues which has made him the enemy and nothing to do with the fact that apparently he wants to be able to think outside the confines of the institution. That's the kind of claptrap that this one's wife would come out with. Another bombshell is William's brutal response. The excerpt also goes into Harry's very rocky relationship with his brother, Prince William, which is said to be at an all-time low. No shit, Sherlock. The siblings have now been locked in a bitter feud for a number of years, and it seems there is no end in sight. One of the flashpoints in their rift was the publication of Harry's explosive memoir, Spare. Well, again, this is hardly new news, is it? In which he claimed that William physically attacked him in a heated row at Kensington Palace. He broke my necklace, amongst other allegations. In a series of interviews earlier this year, Harry said he wanted an apology from his family about how he was treated, sense of entitlement, especially as he and this one's wife voiced their concerns about how life in the firm had been affecting their mental health. What utter fucking phooey. You're in an institution where you have people running around doing what you want, passing you your clothing, making your breakfast, driving you where you need to be, arranging your diary. Oh, what a hard life. The people that have true problems are the ones that are sat there thinking, do I feed my kids or do I turn the heating on? I borrowed some money from a loan shark, and it's time for it to be repaid, and I'm going to get a kicking. There's rampant damp in the corner of the kids' bedrooms, and I don't know what to do. Those are challenges that people face which impact upon their mental health. People who've got a tremendous workload at work and as a consequence of cutbacks aren't given the support or assistance that they require. Thus they work longer and longer hours, becoming sleep deprived. That impacts upon people's mental health. People who are being bullied at school or at work, that impacts upon their mental health. Not a pair of overprivileged dimwits who just don't like it because they didn't get their own way. It's a disgrace to suggest that that impacts upon their mental health. But of course, it's entirely typical of the victim mentality that we're used to experiencing in relation to this one's wife and how that has infected Harry. During the brutal one-word response Harry received when leaving royal life, he writes, I was talking to a source quite early on in the process, and they called Harry a defector, and said that was William's view. These were two men who once upon a time were firmly aligned in their outlook. One of them had to move on to also protect the crown. And we all know why that relationship crashed and burned, because a spider came along. Another apparent bombshell, although it's becoming patently clear that this is just the regurgitation of information that we already knew, relates to brainwashing fears. Meanwhile, the book also goes as far to say that William doesn't want to know his younger brother, who he believes has been brainwashed by an army of therapists. It claims William believes Harry and this one's wife blindsided the family, even the Queen, with their public complaints and their oh-so-California self-importance. An opinion he has repeatedly voiced in various ways to friends and aides during the past 2 years. Bellendgame will be released at the end of this month and is described on Amazon as a penetrating investigation into the current state of the British monarchy. The book's description goes on to say, an unpopular king. Really? A power-hungry heir to the throne. Why is he power-hungry? He's the heir to the throne. He doesn't need to be power-hungry. A queen willing to go to dangerous lengths to preserve her image. What are those dangerous lengths? Has she been assassinating people? And a prince forced to start a new life after being betrayed by his own family. I think you'll find he betrayed his own family. Endgame, which will be published on November the 28th, is subtitled Inside the Royal Family and the Monarchy's Fight for Survival. Well, as you've noted, I've christened it Bellendgame because it's written by a bell end and it's just a load of pap that's being pumped out to try and generate sympathy for the Sussexes, and it's entirely see-through in that nature. We'll find out in due course what lies and revisions of history it contains, and it will have, of course, all of the sticky paw prints of this one's wife all over it. As for those bombshells, they're hardly so. It's information that was already out there, and therefore it's likely that all you're going to get is a regurgitation of existing information layered with lashings of sympathy symphonies and pity plays for the Sussexes. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.